always ask all these damn questions. People always ask all these damn questions. All these damn questions. People always ask all these damn questions.
People always asking me all these damn questions, and they so confused. I don't know what to tell them. Why he do this? Why he do that? How you do this? How you do that? Hell yeah, I'm trying to do what I want, and I get good grades. That's why I wear these hats ways. These people recognize that's why they stay up in my face. Cause
people always ask all these damn questions. People always ask all these damn questions.
Hey, welcome back. Happy New Year.
Peace. Happy New Year, sir.
It's been a crazy year already. Crazy year. It's good to see you, man. How you doing?
Oh man, I'm good, man. 2024 is the year of exposure. If you was hiding something in 2023 or 2020, whatever, it's gonna be exposed in 2024. The truth is coming to light.
Hey, and you never lie. And there's a lot of things that we could actually talk about exposure. Man, that Cat Williams thing. I don't know. I remember we had a quick little back and forth on text real quick. But did you get to see it?
I did. I saw it.
So what do you actually think about it?
Oh man, I take, me, man, I'm a dissector, man. Like I never realized how much, time and energy and philosophy went into making jokes.
I did actually.
The science. I didn't know about the science that it was.
I think comedians are some of the most intelligent, game-changing people that we have in this world who actually get to speak the truth.
Yeah, well, because they stand right at the edge of the acceptable realm of public discourse. They're right at the buffer.
Well, it takes a good person to live there, but you can't. You gotta not care, because I'm gonna tell you, she was flinging that shit. It was deep too. It felt like
no,
but
man.
Go ahead.
No, man. Because we deal with a lot of gatekeepers in many industries.
Yes. And
I think the idea is that when you become a gatekeeper in any industry, or when you can say yay or nay to somebody's career, it's important that you have people at the gate who ain't afraid that the person come behind them is more talented. Because as a gatekeeper, I can stop you who is more talented than me, because I don't want you to take my shine. So we want those at the gate who realizes that, look, you don't even have to say nothing. You can have the gate. I don't need it no more, because I couldn't stop you anyway. Because
So hold on, the gate. So let's talk about social identity. So the gate, right? So we're talking about a gate to a social platform, honestly, right? When we're thinking about these gates, we're thinking about people having resources and people wanting to be a part of a certain group.
Yes.
Everybody wants to identify at something, right? Inclusion is the first stage of psychological safety.
Yeah.
Right. And you ask the question when we were talking about SALT, you say, what, why? Right? You ask the question, why?
Why?
It's like, but because everybody wants to be included. Why are they gatekeepers? Because they are people who want to keep people out of certain social groups. Why does that happen? Why do we have that?
Yeah, but I think, on a fundamental level, I think when the word is that heavy, you got to define it to me. So so if you would say in conclusion means what to you?
In conclusion means wrapping up.
No, I mean like included, to be included. What does it mean?
Included, we talk about wanting to be a part of something without being denied access.
But is there a time where it's important to deny access, even though somebody wants to be there?
Absolutely.
So like the military, somebody says, hey, I want to serve, but they're like, I can't do the duck walk.
Well, you don't meet standards, so you can't serve, right?
So the question then becomes is who creates the standard, or what becomes the metric for being in the group? What is who determines the criteria?
And so this is what we talked about. What comes first? What do you need? Trust or necessity?
And so this is a beautiful question, because I like to think that, you know, we'll go back to a little basic. You know, I'm gonna take you back a little bit, so follow me a little bit, okay?
Okay.
So when we're doing team building, we go through 5 stages of team building. The first stage is forming, meaning what is this group forming for? Why are we here for? Because if we don't know why we're forming, we're not a group. So we have a group for a reason. Once we're formed, we have to storm. That's the second phase. We have to work out our problems, hash out our disagreements. We got to have those tough conversations that may be uncomfortable and vulnerable. All right. And then once we get through the storming, we start to norm. We start to see things the same way. We start to agree and have process in places when we disagree. And then stage 4 is performing. And when a group is performing, it means it's doing what that group intended to do. And then the last stage of the team is to break up.
Right.
Because once the mission is done, the team is no longer needed. And there's a process that you should go through in each of those stages. So when you speak about group identity, that's what I think about initially.
So a group essentially should be broken up. Even when it's formed, there is still a process involved to break the group up.
Yes, there is a process. But when you start to talk about the group and why the group was formed, sometimes the reason the group was formed could have changed over time.
Well, so the identity evolves.
Yes.
And if it's not for, we'll say, a reverent purpose, it would end up being something.
Yeah. So and we've all heard the argument about, you know, the Democrats used to be the Dixiecrats of the South, and they used to be the party of KKK, and the Democrats used to be all this, and we like, okay, that's why the group was formed. Did they go through any stages?
Right. Did
they go back to the storming stage and say, hey, all this racism ain't a good idea?
Well, so everything that you just explained gets back to what we tend to discuss from time to time, which is SALT and riot. And with SALT being, you know, how to be or how to see, and we'll say riot being how to be, it goes through those same processes of understanding why you form, storm, norm, and end up performing and then breaking up. The thought will be breaking up. The intent of breaking up is a deliberate process to eliminate the snowball effect or avalanche effect of bias in a group.
I don't think that getting bias out of a group is a goal of a group. You can have bias in a group. I think the group's biases, because we understand that individuals act differently individually than when they're in a group. Is that safe to say?
That is safe to say. I agree with that premise. Yeah.
So individuals are going to, like, for example, most people, if you look at the Capitol riots on January 6th, they talk about that idea that I was in a group and I got pumped up by the group.
Right.
They said that I was, you know.
There's a dopamine that comes along with that.
So when I'm in a group, I cannot speak for my actions or behaviors until I'm in said group for said purpose. So any speculation or theorizing about my behavior to me is irrelevant. Saying what you would or would not do until group is set formed. Is that fair?
Right. Well, you have to be a part of the group to understand how you would react in the group anyway. I mean, there is a anticipated feeling, and I would say there would be an anticipated action,
Yeah,
but
but that's the larger the group, the easier it is to deal with dissidents in the group and still be the group. The
right,
smaller the group, the more it requires agreement on things that are essential to primarily. If I had to sum it up, I would say it like this: take out a piece of paper, write down on that paper the things you're willing to die for on that paper, fold it up, and go put it in your neighbor's mailbox. If they willing to die for the same things, we got an ally.
right. You're on the
And then he
same
goes
page.
to the next neighbor. And then when we get to the 99th neighbor, and they've all said yes, when the last dude says no, he ain't in our group. He's a threat to our group. And that's what the Declaration of Independence was. It was people who wrote down on a piece of paper that they've had enough, and they formed their own group.
Mhm.
And said, hey, we disagree with your group behavior. We want to do our own thing. And so when you're willing to write down what you're willing to die for on a piece of paper and give it to someone, then you'll understand how important it is to know what happens in groups when it becomes a life or death situation.
Okay, and that's perceived life or death or actual life or death because
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
right. Okay, so social identity theory, as we talk about it right now, is groupthink, right? And it's I would say a thought that you just want to be accepted and you don't want to be questioned about it unless there's some sort of special initiation to say that I'm part of this particular group, right? But the identity is to be a part of it, for there to be exclusion, right?
Yes.
Because that's what makes the group elite.
Yes.
But it comes from the premise, in my opinion. So it's a step. You got steps. You got egoism, then you got relativism, right? And so it seems very low vibrational to limit a world to social identity theory, but it exists because social interaction is one of the most important pillars in I would say, Marlowe's hierarchy of needs. I would have to say, with that in place, social identity will always be at the top of the frameworks that controls people. And so with groupthink being in place, people don't actually want to think, right? People want to be in part of a group where they can just be unconscious. Like you go to a concert and everybody's chanting the same thing, right? The beehive, right? And inside of here, you have you want there's a no rules type thing going on here because hey, everything we do is accepted here until it's not. And if
Yeah.
somebody comes in here, if somebody gets hurt because they're against the group, well, hell, that's part of it. And that's
Yeah.
how we think.
Yeah. And I think that social identity theory is an intersectionality theory. It doesn't operate in isolation. So it's one of those overlay theories that ultimately operates under other frameworks, like game theory.
Right.
So if I'm going to do a game theory and I'd say, listen, let's play a game
Okay,
right
Jigsaw.
now. Let's play a game. And I can make the rules, but you can make the first choice. And I said, would you rather choose to be a white person in America or a black person in America, male or female? Which would you choose?
What if I had to play a game?
This is a game. And you're playing a game, and you you're in America, and you had to pick would you rather be a black person or a white person in the game.
I mean, if it's a game, right? I would choose maybe just seeing how it would be to be a white person to see how far I can go without the barriers that I would have as a black person.
So the reason that I asked the question, well, the reason that I asked the question the way I asked the question is because the idea of the question is to create reflection, but it's also to say, if I'm playing a game, I want the dominant strategy. I want the best strategy. I don't want the emotional strategy. I don't want the history strategy. I want the strategy that's going to give me the least amount of obstacles because I'm playing a game and I want to win. Is that fair?
That's fair. I mean, everybody wants to win.
Want to win. And if I know that being a certain color will help me win, then why would I want to be the color that's going to help me win? If that's what I think. But some people may think the opposite. But my concern isn't about the thinking. My concern is about when we look at it through game theory. That's how we would approach it. I would approach that question. But I could approach the same question differently through social action theory. Now I could have a whole different answer. Because now I'm looking at it through the lens of positivity change in the social activities. But once again, I think what we bring these things together is we get into this idea of praxis. And that is how is or what is the best process to do something? What is the best process to raise a child? What is the best? Go ahead.
Well, so with that segue, you would have to identify your perspective. And so I think social identity theory comes down to just identifying your perspective and how you're going about it at that time in real time. Right. And so and there is a competition with that because there's a competition within self to get better. Depending on what you're doing, if you want to get healthy, you're working out, you want to go further in academia, you're going to school, right? You want to make more money, you're going to work, you want to have your family, you're working on that, you're having kids. These are all different perspectives and pivots you can turn on that at the end of the day makes one person. And that one person has multiple social identities to form one that places him, and then we can have that in a positive light or the objective light of classism, tribalism, and some sort of racism, right? And so there's a placement, and that's why we talk about the immediate size up when somebody's talking, when there's a conversation had. Right? There's an immediate size up because the person is trying to locate them to see how they're going to talk to them. And say, how is this exchange going to go? Because if it's not going to make any sense, it's not going to go long. But if there's some sort of reciprocity, okay, I might have a little time for this. But if I can benefit from this and not have to give up anything, I might have a lot of time for this.
Yeah. And everyone knows something that I don't know. Right. If I approach people with the idea that you know something I don't know, then I will see you as an opportunity to learn and not as an object. I will treat you as an ends and not a means. And I think in doing so, I find that it's harder. I think it's harder to explain your process without knowing your story, because my story explains my process. I think like if I tried to separate my story from my process, then you would have to study my life to know my process. Because I think that what we are trying to see is we're trying to create best processes without the data all the time to make it. Meaning if I had more data now, I could have a better praxis. But all I have is the data I have now. And because this is my data now, I have to now make the decision off of the now, not the me 5 years from now, or me the Weinzer now, or me when I read that book I've been telling myself I'm gonna read. No, I'm making it now, in the present, and I'm ready to defend it in the now.
Well, so okay. I think when it comes down to it, I mean, we can have very high level conversations, and which we do. And I like to always keep it around the high to low, depending on what we're talking about, right? But these are supposed to be tools that we want to pass on to be able to help people, have a praxis or a process to be able to, assess life and be able to apply certain things to it quick, like without, you being able to understand what somebody's doing should not take a whole movie or biography to tell whether this person's right or wrong. In their actions, like why they do it.
I think I have an idea. I'll share with you a question, and maybe you can answer it for me in this way. I'll put it like this. Let's say that I have a praxis or a process that has been very lucrative for me, and I don't want to share my process because I would diminish my essentially wealth and livelihood, because my praxis is lucrative, because I know something that no one else knows and I can benefit from that. So I don't want to share with anybody else. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. So if that's the case, then the praxis of sharing knowledge is the most dangerous thing we can do.
Yes.
Because if I give you, because I can give you the sword to stab me.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I think that when we start to talk about
hold on. What would excuse me. So the true concern, or we'll say threat in the mind, would be taking information and using it against the giver, right? And then like completely annihilating, getting rid of the originator of the information, right? So the fear is that there will be some sort of elimination once the information comes out. Hey, now that I have this information, I could kill you or dominate you.
Well, that's a fear motive.
No, yeah, well, that would be the hesitation to share.
That would be one of them. That would be one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Because that would be one of them. Because I think that if I'm looking at it from the perspective that the individual has something that they're afraid to lose, then it's like, no, I actually want to give it away.
Right.
I want to give it away, but I don't know how. So I must develop a praxis. I must develop a praxis to give everything I know away, but not too much.
All right.
Yeah,
no, okay. So
little here.
And so now we're talking about what's the difference. We're talking about sharing.
The difference is that if your process or praxis is successful, others will want to imitate it. If your process or praxis is not successful, it will be discarded.
Success being subjective, right? That would fall into the social identity to say, hey, I want to be successful this way. I want to be like this person. I want to emulate this person. So
or we'll use a word more like effective. We'll say the more effective praxis will be used. The most tested.
Effective or efficient?
Well, tested.
Okay, we'll go with
the
tested.
Most tested, meaning this has worked for millennia.
Yeah.
So it's tested. We can prove it. It's verifiable. It's empirical. It's tested. It works. That is a bedrock. That is a foundational pillar. That is a framework that you can see the world from. Ain't going nowhere.
But you have to have the vision to see the framework. I think you do, because at the end of the day, you truly don't know what you're playing in until you're able to identify frameworks to be able to maneuver within them.
Well, and so when I say framework in the sense of lenses. Like, I'll take you back to the old school again. We had that thing called the 4 lenses. You had the green, the blue, the gold. You find the color. This
is salt, though. This is salt. Yeah. So on this premise, right? So identifying the lens, right? So that's light, life, leadership, love, or depending on what you're doing, human, friend, partner, lover, right? And so you're trying to identify where you're at, right? Because and you have to snap too. So we talk. So if
so the question is that there's not just 4 lenses. There's 8 billion of them.
Right.
There's 8 billion of them. Everybody sees the world differently.
They come down those 4. It comes down to those 4 things. And so
what I like to talk to people is I say that if I know your lens, that it will make sure I can craft a message. I know if you're a green, I just need to give you facts and data. I don't need to share with you any emotional stories about how no kids got killed. I just need to tell me who needs what, why they need it, and give me all the data. Let me make my own decision, and I don't want you to try to sway my mind. If I'm a blue, I'm gonna lead with the kids looking hungry.
You're gonna work. You're gonna be a doctor.
Yeah. Well, I mean, attempt to. But
healthcare. I'm saying healthcare people tend to be more blue, right? So if we were, excuse me, you were talking about colors, right? You identify certain colors. Yeah, and so I mean, this goes into salt too, but being able to identify the creators versus your refiners based on their colors, right? So I mean, that's part of the salt experience. But from an so we're talking at a high level. Let's take this back down to, gosh, we hate to do this. Let's talk about people and events, right? And so getting back to a couple of recent things, right? We're not talking about Epstein's list for some reason, right? But right, but we're gonna tie it back to Cat. So the Epstein's Cat came out. We were talking about Epstein's list not being talked about. I'm still trying to get the whole thing, but he said something about Chris Tucker on that list.
Yeah.
Did that catch you off guard?
Initially it did, yeah.
I would say that didn't catch me off guard. And I'm gonna tell you why. My social identity theory framework allows me the ability to profile people, right? And I had that, early. When he did Smokey, man, that was cool. And Rush Hour, he always been a great actor, but there was something. It was something. I'm not saying off, but I was like, when I saw him kicking back with Michael Jackson, like the way he was, though, I was like, what is that? And so as soon as I saw that, his affinity for Michael Jackson, I knew that there was something going on there. So when I heard about his name in that cat interview, I wasn't surprised. Why were you?
You know, I'm not the biggest follower of Hollywood, man. So I think a lot of
Me either.
yeah.
Me either.
So
You know,
a lot of stuff, man. I either like the wife sends me some kind of update or some kind of, you know. So you know, I like to you know now that I'm employed, man, I like to at least know what's going on in society. I feel like it makes it's good for office banter,
for socialization.
Yeah, it's good. But we're in Cleveland, and the Browns are going to the playoffs, so we're pretty good right now. But I think that you bring up a good point, man. I think that if sunlight is the best disinfectant, and when you tell the truth, I saw this on post, man. When you tell the truth, it becomes a part of your past. When you tell a lie, it becomes a part of your future.
Ooh.
And so when you a truth teller, all you got to do is just say the truth and do the truth, because it's going to be. And you ain't got to worry about them coming back to get you, because I say the truth. Like I say the same thing right now that I'd say it, wherever I'm at, because I know that I'm a truth sayer. And
you don't have to remember it.
Yeah, I don't have to remember nothing, because I'm speak from the heart. But I know that when it comes to a lot of people behaviors, I know there's a culture. And this is much older than America. Primarily a lot of Greek cultures, men-boy love was a big issue. It was a societal issue. It was a rites of passage issue, that men would groom young children in pedophilia. This was culturally acceptable. This was known, and it was something that was a private matter. It was not a public issue. And so, and this has always primarily been a thing with people in powerful positions. I did hear that Epstein was an agent to collect dirt on people, which would make sense to me, because nowadays we're in the blackmail age. But I thought I did think that it was interesting, because usually there's some liability for insinuating that people do things that they haven't done, some liability laws. So for him to say it, I thought that he was taking a risk by associating him with anything inappropriate. So that's.
You talking about Chris?
No, I'm talking about Cat Williams.
I know you're talking about Cat, just talking about anybody, or we're talking about Chris?
No, I'm talking about so essentially libel. I think the way the libel laws are set up in America, that if you are defaming someone's name, reputation, or character, primarily if they're a public figure, I think they have different protections. So
yeah. But that wouldn't have been libel right there. That would have just been slander, because libel, I think it has to be written.
Yeah. So yeah, you're right. Yeah. So, and I think that that's part of that process, is that if when you are a scholar, you can write it close to that line where you can say something, but it's just like you've been studying case law, and that I'm just on that line. And they probably not going to fight me, because they know that their lawyers probably know they can't win.
Don't you love it? I love it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Because I
can do it.
Yeah, it's a strategy. And,
oh my God.
And when you start to talk about people, man, I think that it goes to say something about a culture, man. Because we talked about earlier before, man. When you say the word culture, you have to say the word cult.
Yeah. Because
cult and culture are the same root word, and the difference between a cult and a culture is very, very, very slim.
Well, a cult is the actual group. Culture is how they do it.
And so we've had cults that have been suicide cults, and we've had cults that have been,
Indianapolis.
Worshiping Mary, Mother Joseph.
Oh yeah.
And so when I think about the difference, you know, I'm always mindful about identity and consciousness, how we see the world, how our issues, the way we expose things are like no other culture does. Like we'll put you on blast. Like we will get like, and I think
Are we talking about Black culture specifically right now?
well, I mean, I'm gonna
Well,
say I'm gonna say American culture.
I'm going to say Black culture specifically is a put your ass on blast culture.
No, and the reason that I don't say Black culture is because I believe that there's the Black culture that was inculcated, and then there's the Black culture that was created.
Yeah. We'll say current temperature Black culture.
Yeah, because I like to think that this is scripted. Like Cat Williams said, Hollywood is scripted. Everything's scripted. There's people making money off of this. There's gaslighters, people who wasn't even talked about in the video making videos, people eating off of this video. And that's good because it's good for the sport. And I think that he looks at comedy as a sport. And you know, a lot of the stuff that I think that they always used to say stuff to people that they were too smart for their own good. You heard that saying before?
Every day.
And it's like, well, how do I conceptualize that I'm too smart for my own good? And it's like, because your praxis becomes something that is growing, that's not being practiced. Because I'm growing my praxis. But when I'm talking about doing, it's like I'm in a stage of development. I'm in a stage. And I think that the only time we should be practicing or processing something new without testing it is dangerous to test. It's dangerous to create a process that has not been tested. Would you agree?
I would.
Yeah. So if I'm going to do a process, I'm not going to test it on nobody. I'm not going to test it on you. It could have harmful effects.
I see where you're going from an ethical standpoint.
Yeah.
But there are practices practiced on people all the time.
No, and I know, but my point is that if your praxis becomes this, then it's not really something it's like I have to see, like there's a I'm trying to think of an analogy of the delay. Like if you see a skid mark on the road, all right, from a skid, this is just FYI. If you see a skid mark on the road, I can measure how long the skid mark is, and there's an equation, there's a formula that I can put in, which is 1.4 seconds of reactionary time. I know that person had to have at least had 1.4 seconds to notice that vehicle, because the brake distance from the time they locked up and made the skid would have had to be going this fast on this pavement, because the coefficient of friction of the road at a probabilistic level would be this degree. And I would put an equation in and get a formula and say at this specific intersection or this time is when that vehicle noticed them. And I could say at 77 feet, they realized the vehicle was there, but they were traveling at 60 miles an hour. And because they were 60 miles an hour at 77 feet, they did not have enough time to come to a complete stop, hitting the vehicle, blah, 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 blah. Because I was trained as an accident investigator. And when I did my reports to the insurance companies, they would want that specificity, especially if there was a fatality. And if there was a fatality, then they would know that there would be liability there, and they would have to understand that there was a test, there was a process. So when I go to court and they want to know how did I get the coefficient of friction from the road, then I could tell them that I built a drag sled and I tested with a tire on that same pavement. You know what I mean?
You would be an expert witness, sir.
Boom. But the thing is, but I didn't learn that at the courtroom.
No,
I didn't learn that. I didn't practice that in that day because I had to go through weeks and weeks of training and weeks and weeks of training and weeks and weeks of drawing diagrams and going through accidents and doing all this stuff and calculating a motorcycle crash with on a turn with a raise of 30 degrees at a speed. You know what I'm saying? So when you get a specificity and you become a subject matter, I can't give you that praxis in 20 minutes.
Praxis.
And the difference is that we want shortcuts on our praxis.
Do we want shortcuts or loopholes?
Well, I think that I say shortcuts because there are times in theoretical frameworks you can make shortcuts theoretically.
Well, I think,
but in real life,
I don't want to nerd out on this one.
Yeah.
But for a split second, I think what happens with a shortcut is you degrade the system of what you're using. So like your body, an experience, right? Yeah. I think with a loophole, you're still able to apply with a shortcut, you lose. With a loophole, you gain.
Yeah, but if the goal is to get to the finish line and the person who gets there first wins, however I get there, it's in the acceptable rules, I'm going to do it.
But we're talking, but yes. But in a vacuum, yes. But we're talking about,
and the reason that I say it's a theory, the reason that I say praxis you can take shortcuts in theory. Because theory is you can play with it.
No. Well, no. Okay. Yes, but again, you take shortcuts when you don't know where you're going. And even if you do know where you're going, you didn't create it. You have no part of the power. You're just using a shortcut to circumvent a power issue, right? A loophole is using the power grid itself to get what you want.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that I can make a semantical argument that I want to create language that is acceptable for the point of
I got you.
doing something. You know what I'm saying? That I'm doing something to get the result quicker. Like I want to take, like Cat Williams said, you want to go, you taking steroids, but then you want to come around the people who actually doing the hard work at the gym and then try to give them some workout tips.
No, it's that's like, what I'm saying. Bro. The steroids is the shortcut, right? Well, but what I'm saying, for semantical reasons, I'm literally separating shortcut from loophole because I want to be able to identify power dynamics between the two.
Yeah, but and I accept that. I mean, yeah, I accept that. I mean, it doesn't detract from the point.
I think from a framework standpoint, for me, from the mechanism of like trying to make sure that a person understands a framework, because a shortcut in a framework means that there could be a principle missed.
Oh yeah. So let me unpack that a little bit. Okay, when I say a shortcut in a framework, it means like this. This is the shortcut I mean. Critical race theory was birthed out of critical theory. Now, I may not be an expert in critical theory itself. What is critical theory? Why was critical theory created? What was it created to do? Well, critical theory was created to challenge power structures. So it would make sense that critical race theory is challenging a power structure. So the shortcut would be, I am not studying critical theory first. The shortcut is I'm going right into critical race theory because I accept that critical theory is valid for this inquiry. And so that's the shortcut.
Gotcha.
And so the idea that, but I'm only taking the shortcut because I understand that people may attach the word critical race theory to something that is untenable, not discussable socially. Don't want to talk about that in public settings. So what do I have to do? Because critical race theory would predict that. Because the theoretical framework would say that people don't want to talk about racial topics in public. It's
racial, religious, about everything that's not to be to discuss.
Yeah,
is to be.
But I wanted to, if I had to rank order these issues, so yes, you're correct. These are issues we don't discuss. But if I wanted to rank order them, I would put race as the number one issue. Because in race, we have to talk about religion, and in race, we have to talk about some other issues that are associated. And let me tell you why. Because if you talk to people, and this is especially for older Black people, not younger ones, because I would separate demographics on this one, because I think that older Black people are more uncomfortable talking about racism among older white folks than younger people are, because younger people will have the conversation. They're very open. They'll have the conversations because they understand they need to be had.
I want to revisit something you said, and I don't want to disagree with it.
Dude, please. I like disagreements.
Me too.
I do.
Me too. I just think
Please.
It is situational, because you can ask your run-of-the-mill person about statistics, smart people, and it's not going to be right.
Yeah,
it's not going to be right.
Yeah,
even your smartest person is not going to be right.
Yeah,
and so I don't think race is the topic that people think it actually is until it is.
Yeah,
I think that classism and tribalism top it, because in settings of only white people, only Black people, right? And unless you're mingling, right? So we say homogeneous.
Okay.
You're going to have conversations of tribalism and classism inside of that race more than you're going to talk about race, unless there's a particular event, or unless there's some sort of intersectionality, right? Unless there is a world where they're living symbiotically. Unless there's symbiotic living, there is not going to be a heavy conversation about race. It's going to be more about tribalism and classism. Agree or disagree?
No, and so the reason that I say race is the number one issue is because if I said I was building a theoretical foundation for America, racism would be the cornerstone I would build it on. Racism,
and now we're talking, right?
Racism is the cornerstone. It is the pillar that holds the other pillars in place. It's the pillar. And the reason I know it's the pillar is because there would have not been a union. There would have not been a United States of America. The 13 colonies would have not come together without the ability to own people like chattel. That's what they said.
You are absolutely right. The biggest problem out of all of that is that it was formed from the game theory. So only limiting it to race is not wrong. It's not wrong, but it's limited. It's not wrong, because the game theory would tell you that racism was a constructed thing as a distraction.
I don't. So just so we're clear, I don't look at game theory as the foundational lens for America's creation.
No, I don't.
I
I'm
don't.
not
And
saying
so,
that.
just so we're clear, so I don't see now. I see game theory at play, but it's
Right.
it's a later lens. The
Right,
first,
but
the
I
first,
just wanted
yeah,
to make sure we identify
yeah,
that with the critical race theory and excuse me, not when I say game theory, I wanted to say critical theory. The
yeah,
critical theory with the critical race theory. It's important to remember the critical theory because I think it ties into game theory, just because of the way that
yeah.
the socioeconomical game that was played in the white community with the rich white people
And so
giving guns to the poor white people.
just so you know my framework of looking at this situation, I don't use any of those theories. I use punctuated equilibrium theory because it comes from evolutionary biology. I study humanity like animals because we have similar behavior like animals. We just don't like to call ourselves animals, but we are. We're just a sophisticated, higher form of animal.
Yeah.
Capable of communication, written communication. And I think if you were to say the biggest thing from us to the animal is we can write our instructions where the animal has to pass down genetic information via DNA and genetics. We can write instructions down. We can write our praxis down for our descendants so that they can use our practices over time and write them, compile them down, and say, here, my son, here's 200 years of our practices that have kept us successful as a tribe. In order for our tribe to stay successful, continue these practices, my son.
All right. These, hey, and I punctuated event.
So punctuated equilibrium explains
Punctuated
that
equilibrium theory.
we go through long periods of stasis, and then there's boom, something happens that changes the power dynamic, that shifts the game, rules, and changes the dominant strategy. Because in game theory, the dominant strategy means that I don't lose no matter what I do. So if I'm playing a game with you and I know that I can't lose because of my strategy, no matter what you do, then I can essentially control the outcome of the game.
Unless something changes that, which would be
And something punctuates the equilibrium.
Yeah, so I would say the only framework above PET would be like evolution.
Well, that's where it comes from. PET is an evolutionary theory applied to public policy. So it changes the speciation, how we get there. And it just took what it saw in nature and applied it to policy. And it dissects the policy to say why things are not changing. Now, the reason that I say racism is because let me tell you this. I've done some reading on this subject a little bit, and I'll share with you some of my findings.
You've done a little bit of reading?
I've done a little bit of reading on this subject, and I'll share with you my explanation, my cocky explanation.
Oh,
my cocky explanation is this, is that America has done nothing really as a nation, not as an individual or as a group, to heal racism. We have had very little state action, very little local action, and very little federal action to address the systemic casteization, characterization, and ultimately character destruction that has happened to the Black image via war on drugs, via all these prohibitions and all these things that were done to us systemically to put us where we are. These are not excuses. These are just facts. Nothing. Now, because the government has done nothing, I am left to infer to what has been done to the population as a whole. Meaning, if I took 20 people and I put them in a room and I said, how were you raised? How were you raised? And I'm going to look at it this way. I'm going to first start with the media of your country. I'm going to look at your media. I'm going to look at how were these people depicted through your history. Nothing has done to depict them as loving, caring, kind, very little image of self-worth. And it's been degradation. It's put the woman dress on and entertain me Negro.
Oh,
Step and fetch for me. So anyway, so since nothing has been done nationally, all we can hope that has happened is at the individual level, certain families that saw bigotry did not continue those practices in their home. And I hope that that's going on at a massive scale in this country, that around this country, that around fireside chats, they're talking about the bigotry of grandma and granddad and how granddad used to do horrible things, because in that time, not only was it socially acceptable for granddad to do those things, if granddad did not do those things, granddad could have not been in the group. Because the KKK at its height had 4 million people, adjusted for population. That would be like saying, how many people are in the NRA, but no, how many people love guns? It's the same number on the per capita of those who can't pay. So anyway, so since nothing has been done, the hope is that on an individual level, the individuals have done some work on their families and to get some bigotry out of their hearts and biases. However, when there is time for them to behave as a group, that individual learning that they have will be resorted out of them, because we will resort back to an animal primalistic state where you don't know me and I don't know you. I see you as threat, not because I want to see you as threat. I have been conditioned, socially learned. I have been conditioned to socially react to you in a certain way. And if I add panic or anything that is unease to me personally, socially, or psychologically, because some people don't want psychological safety, unless you know that. Some don't want it. Some don't like it. Some don't like psychological safety, because some people look at psychological safety as a luxury. And so since they look at it as a luxury, if they lose it, they will become faunish, sheepish group people where 40% will not do anything because they're just not aggressive people. 40% will be violent. These are the younger population. That's why you're seeing a lot of these younger people going out there doing these shootings, because the younger ones will always be the violent ones. It's just history. It repeats itself because it's nature. And then you start to see in this, you add social economic issues to that equation. When you add these factors together, and now you get into social identity theory, what you're going to see is normative truths will be changed. That's why the southern border is a crisis, because I have to otherize you first. Once I otherize you and I tell the people in the country that these are the reason, these people here are the reason you don't have health care or you don't have anything, they're the reasons, not because the politicians are getting kickbacks from the insurance company, because this is your problem. Then that group becomes the issue, which is very dangerous coming up this election year, because you're telling people for years that the reason that Donald Trump is not going to win the election is because there's fraud and it's in predominantly Black areas. What that will do is it will put lunatics who have crisis, they will go to predominantly Black areas thinking that by doing this and killing these Black people, I am helping Donald Trump, because it's already happening, because they're delusional. And power is the ability to define reality. And if they will murder you to keep their reality in place. And people don't understand that psychologically. And I try to tell it to them, but what can I do?
It sounds like you just did. It sounds like you just did, man. I'm kind of jealous. I wanted to rant.
I'm sorry, man. Yeah, I'm sorry, but I haven't talked to anybody in a long time.
Nah, man, I get it. Yeah, enough said. Yeah, we had about the 58-minute mark. I would tell you this. That was a lot. My final thought on top of that.
Get it.
With the social identity theory, it allows for plausible deniability to a lot of people at the right time, but the wrong time for development. So when we talked about development and stages of development, there's a morality that we all have to live by. And I think choosing our social identity class helps define our morals and our ethics consciously and unconsciously. So we got to remember like what the identity we claim to be, what the repercussions of those are, because we don't think about that long range. So I would say my final thought with social identity theory will be to make sure that we are questioning who we are and what group we're a part of. Because if you don't know the true roots of it, it can go deeper and more devastating than you ever know, and it could lead to a detriment, I would say.
Yeah.
And so that's not to be judgmental, it's just to make sure you're judging your situations as best as possible. Because you remember what they used to say to us: do what your rank can handle, right? and and my daddy always told me, you don't need a knife, you don't need a gun, you don't need a stick. You can run a man all the way up the street with the truth,
Mm.
And so being truth to thyself, you would probably not fall into too many different groups.
Oh,
But
man.
you you would hope that you would have developed enough perspective to be ascribed to the groups that you would want to be, though.
Yes.
And so, for our hour to be able to say that we did it, I want to lock that up. The good doc. More to come for us later. Me and you gonna talk after we get off here. But hey, we appreciate everybody checking in, and we'll be back with some money tips and book tips later. Hey, I love when we pop up. I love when y'all pop in. Always objective, always aggressive, all the time.
I think the highest form of admiration you can give in the Black community is, my brother from another mother.
For sure, man.
Yeah.
All right, y'all.